Today we're doing power to a power, power to a product, and power to a quotient for section 5.2. Now remember, a product is when you multiply things, a quotient's when you divide. So you will be doing page 212, 1 through 67 on. Okay, so the power to the power works is when our original term has a power and then we take it to another power. When you see this happening where there's a power inside the parenthesis and outside, we multiply the exponents. I call it outside, inside, we multiply the exponents. So if I have something like this, if I were going to expand it, it would look like this. And then do it twice. Right? But if we use our shortcut, all we have to do is multiply the inside and the outside. So n to the third power times the second power is n to the sixth. N to the third power times the second power is n to the sixth. There we go. Okay. Not sure if you want to write that. Okay. So when we have a power to a power rule, it is y to the third times the fourth power. Okay, again, remember, when we have outside, inside, we're going to multiply. We're going to be doing y to the third times the fourth, so that's y to the 12th. Okay? I'd like to see that step in your work so you're becoming conscious of it. Okay, pause the recording, do the next three. Now check your work. N to the third times the fifth, n to the 15th. T to the second times the third, t to the sixth. K to the 7 times the second, k to the 14th. This is what we call a power to a power. Okay? Next one. Product to a power. When I have two things being, product means to multiply. So first we're multiplying inside. We have that multiplication happening inside, all to a power. So if it's inside the parenthesis, everything in there is to the nth power. That means x is to the nth power and y is to the nth power. Now, please don't call this distributing. It is not distributing. When we distribute, I want you to not get confused, because when we distribute, let's say we have something like this, a plus 2. It's always, to distribute is always around a plus sign. This is not called distributing. This is everything in there is to the nth power. Okay, so let's take a look. Let's do 3 is to the second power, x is to the second power, and we simplify 3 to the second power, that is 9, and x squared can't be simplified anymore. So pause the recording, and now try the next 3 on your own. Now let's check our work. Okay, we're going to do 2 to the third power, y to the third. It's 8, y to the third. Remember, that's not 2 times 3, it's 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. So it's 8y to the squared. Now, we're going to square the negative, we're squaring the 5, and we're squaring the m. So negative 5 squared and m squared. So that negative does get squared because it's inside the parenthesis. Is positive 25. Remember, a negative times a negative makes a positive. 4 to the third and t to the third. 4 to the third is 4 times 4 is 16 times 4 is 64. T to the third. All right, so we're getting bigger and longer. And so remember, everything in here is to the fourth power. I'm taking negative 2 is to the fourth power. A squared times the fourth power. B cubed times the fourth power. And c to the fourth power. Do you want to see this step in your work, in your homework? Okay, the longer they are, the more work I'm going to want to see. So negative 2 to the 4th power is 16. A to the 8th power and B to the 12th power. Remember, we're multiplying with power to power. And C to the 4th. All right, now you try it. Go. Pause the recording. Now let's check our work. You should have negative 5 to the 2nd power, x to the 2nd power, y to the 10th to the 2nd power, and z to the 3rd times the 2nd power, which would be 25 x squared, y to the 20th, z to the 6th. All right, next one we're doing negative 8n to the 3rd. Oh, sorry. Actually, we are going to, I don't know why I said that, because negative 8 is not to a power. Notice it's not inside the parentheses. So we're going to do negative 8, and then we're going to do n to the 3rd times the 2nd power. And then we're doing p to the 4th times the 2nd power. And then we're doing t to the 0 times the 2nd power. Okay, so we get negative 8, n to the 6th, p to the 8th, and t to the 0 really equals, what is t to the 0, right? 0 times 2. T to the 0 is equal to 1. So we don't need to write times 1. We just leave it off because it's going to be its same thing. So it's really negative 8, n to the 6th, p to the 8th, okay? So this right here equals this. Anything to the 0 power. All right, so I'll try the next one. In here, I'm going to remind you everything is to the 2nd power. 3 is squared, a squared, b is squared, c is squared. So 3 squared is 9. A squared, b squared, c squared. Okay, pause the recording and try the next one on your own. Next 5 on your own. Okay, hopefully you finished. Let's see, number 2 should be negative 5 squared. Oops. Negative 5 squared, x squared, y squared. So that's 25x squared, y squared. Remember, negative times negative makes a positive. Okay, negative, that negative is going to be, we're going to have 6 of them. So does this stay negative or is it positive? Well, remember what we said about even amount of negatives versus odd amount. If I have an even amount, 6 negatives will make a positive. So I could do negative a to the 2nd power times the 6th power. So it will end up being, oh yeah, okay, that's another way to look at it. We can take this as the coefficient is 1. And so we can say negative 1 to the 6th power. Just take the negative. Negative to the 6th power. We know that it's going to be positive. And a to the 12th and b to the 6th. But we don't usually write the positive if it's leading. We just assume that's positive. Okay? So if you see a negative leading, that's as good as having a negative 1. Next one, we're doing negative 4 to the 3rd, x to the 3rd, y to the 3rd. It's negative 64, x to the 3rd. It's 3 negatives, so it stays negative. Negative times negative times negative makes a negative. Okay? Negative 5, 2 to the 5th power. Now, is this one going to be negative or positive? It's to the 5th power, so it should be negative. Negative 8, r to the 15th, s to the 10th. And negative 32 to the 5th is negative 32. I don't know if I said that. Last one. I'm not squaring this negative because it's not part of the base of that exponent. Remember, what's part of the base is only what's in the parenthesis. So only in the parenthesis is to the 2nd power. So I'm going to have a negative 1 times 7 squared, m to the 3rd times the 2nd, n to the 2nd. So it's negative 49 m to the 6th n squared. All right, let's move on. More power to a product, okay? We have things inside that are being multiplied. We have two terms, well, two quantities being multiplied. It really ends up being one term when we simplify. Okay, so everything in, we have to simplify first this whole piece here. And then we simplify this whole piece. So 3 squared times x squared times 2, y to the 3rd times 2. Everything in there is to the 2nd power. And that simplifies to 9 x to the 4th, y to the 6th. And over here, we're still multiplying because next to, or the parentheses, mean multiply. I'm getting negative 4 squared, x squared, y to the 2nd times the 2nd. So that becomes 16 x to the 2nd, y to the 4th. Okay. That is, let's do this. 9 times 6 is 54. 144 x to the 6th. Okay, so now when we're doing that, okay, now remember, at this point, we're multiplying coefficient with coefficient, 144. We're doing x to the 4th plus the 2nd now. Now, there's no more parentheses. When we multiply, we really add the exponents. Only when we do power to a power do we multiply. But when it's true multiplication like this, we're adding the exponents. Y to the 6th times y to the 4th. It's y plus 4. So that becomes 144 x to the 6th, y to the 10th. And you do need to finish it all the way up. So I'd like you to pause the recording and try the next one on your own. Okay, let's check our work. Okay, so we have 2 to the 2nd power, which is 4. Let's do this. I'm going to do 2 to the 2nd power is 4. A to the 3rd times the 2nd is 6. Outside, inside. B to the 5th times the 2nd is the 10th. And C is to the 2nd. Okay, so I should have at least one intermediary step here. And then I'm going to go times, here we go again, negative 2 to the 3rd power is negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. And then I have A to the 3rd, B to the 12th. So now I'm ready to multiply coefficient with coefficient, negative 32. A to the 6th plus the 3rd, B to the 10th plus the 12th, and C squared. Negative 32, A to the 9th, B to the 22nd, C squared. So if I got that one right. Oh, let's go back. Let's double check that. Yep, got that right. Doesn't matter if you use parentheses or dot. Okay, now we're doing power of a quotient. That means quotient is division, so everything in there is to the a power. 2 is squared, x is squared, 5 is squared. So 2 squared, x is squared, 5 is squared. You can do it any way. You can do it like this, square the numerator, square the denominator, but you're still going to have to square the, you can either do it like that and then say 2x times 2x, or I kind of just square everything in there. Let's see what they do. They're doing 2, 4x squared over 25. So if I had had this, I probably would have done, I think I just kind of do it like this. I just write it 2 squared, x squared, 5 squared. And that simplifies to 8x squared over 25. So a couple different ways to write it. Both ways are accurate. There's no one right way. Okay, pause the recording, try the next one on your own. Now let's check our work. I'm doing 5 squared, a to the second power times the second power, b to the fourth power times the second power, all over 3 squared. So that's 25, a to the fourth, b to the eighth, all over 9. Okay? Okay. Now eventually, if there's something, we may have to reduce fractions like this. All right, so let's try. I'll do the first one. Remember, everything in there is, why don't you try 1 through 4? Go. So y would be 4th power times the 5th power is the 20th power, and 3 to the 5th. That would be 3 to the 4th is 81 times 1 more. 80 times 3 is 240 and 248, 243, sorry. 243, okay, and y to the 20th, okay, finish up the rest. So 2 to the 3rd, a to the 7th times the 3rd, and 5 to the 3rd. That's 8, a to the 21st, over 125. Okay, I would have skipped this right here and just gone right to this. Okay, next one. Remember, we have to do both numerator and denominator, so, and the negative gets squared. So, negative 2/3 squared. Let's see how they write that. Or we can just put this all as like negative, let's see how they did it. Okay, they're just squaring the whole fraction. So the negative squared makes it positive. Whoops. 2 is squared, so it's 4. 3 is squared, so it's 9. 4 times 2 is 8. The b to the second power times the second power is 4. All right, so I'm doing negative 4 squared is x squared, and x squared times squared. Again, I would skip this step and go right to this next step. Negative 4 is squared, x squared times squared, y squared, 7 is squared, a is squared, which simplifies to 16 x to the 4th, y squared, over 49, a squared. All right. These, I kind of skipped over these before because this is taking two things. We're going power to a power, and then we're using our adding and subtracting. So the first thing we're going to do is do 3 is to the second power, x is to the second power. So 3 squared is 9, x to the 4th, times 5x, minus, that's 8. No, sorry, it's 2 to the 4th power is 16, x to the 4th, x, okay? 16x to the 4th x. Okay, now we have to simplify these. Now, what we did there was our power to a power rule. Okay, now we're going to simplify each side. Now we're going into what we did yesterday. So we just, our coefficients, we're just simplifying each side first. With this, we're going to multiply our coefficients, and because we're multiplying like bases, okay, remember we add the exponents. So 9 times 5 is 45, and x to the 4th plus the 1st is x to the 5th. So that's 45, x to the 5th, minus, and then I'm getting 16, x to the 4th. Remember, here we're going to be adding the exponents, so the 4th power plus the 1st power. It's not outside, inside, so we add them. is the fifth power. So now, since they are the same term, we can combine like terms. The base doesn't change. All we really do is when the term is the same and we're adding and subtracting, we just add or subtract the coefficient. So 45x to the fifth minus 16x to the fifth make 10, 35, make 29x to the fifth. We're gonna, so that was the rule of common bases, and now this would be our combining like terms. So remember, we can multiply unlike terms, but we cannot add. We can only you can't add unlike terms. You can only add and subtract like terms, and the term stays the same. All right, so this is getting a little trickier. This is really hard. There's not going to be that much of this, and this is probably the most difficult part at this point. But let's try it. So, again, we have to just simplify each side first. So I'm going to take a power to a power. Okay? So 3 second is 9. A to the second times the second is a to the fourth. B to the second stays b to the second, and c to the third times the second is c to the sixth. Now, notice it's multiplied by 2, let me switch colors. 2 to the second, which is 4. A to the second times the second, which is a to the fourth. B to the second. Now I'm going to keep simplifying that. Now remember, our coefficients get multiplied. 36. I have a to the fourth plus the fourth. We have b to the second plus the second, and c to the sixth plus nothing. Okay, and that simplifies to 36, a to the eighth, b to the fourth, c to the sixth. Now, I should see some work. I'm okay for you to skip this step and jump right here, and then jump right here. That's fine. So I could see you doing it in 3 steps, but I should see some work with these, okay? Now, we are subtracting, and now we have the same thing here. Let's start with black. Okay, a is to the third, b is to the third, and c is the second times the third. So that becomes a to the third, b to the third, c to the sixth. Times, right? Oh, everything's the same. 5, a to the fifth, b. Okay? Now, what is that coefficient of that first term? It's a 1. So remember, we multiply, and we get 5. I'm getting a to the third plus the fifth, b to the third plus the first, right? And c to the sixth. So that's 5, a to the eighth, b to the fourth, c to the sixth. So if I have 36 of these, 36, and I take 5 away, I end up with 31, a to the eighth, b to the fourth, c to the sixth. Okay, now try the next one on your own. I have to erase this to continue on. Okay, let's check our work. So here we simplified down to m to the sixth, n to the third. The first part, there was nothing because there's no power outside. Okay, and over here I'm going to make that plus 9m squared n to the fourth. And then I'm going to get, the second one stays the same. So now we have to simplify this side to one term. So the coefficient here is 1. So it's going to be 7 m to the seventh n to the 6th. Plus, over here, we're getting negative 36. So that's really going to be a plus minus becomes minus. M to the 2nd plus the 5th is m to the 7th. And n to the 4th plus the 2nd is n to the 6th. Okay? So 7 minus 36 is negative 29, m to the 7th, n to the 6th. Okay, here we go. I think we're getting to the end. That's it, my friends. That's it.